by way of background on me, I started off in management consulting, both online and offline. JP Morgan, I was at PayPal for 6 years. I used to lead product for Grab, and then been at Rapyd for about 1.5 years, in Singapore for 6 years. So I've been doing payments for a long time, and I think a lot of you here might have been doing payments for a long time as well. So e-commerce, right, growing 18% year on year, right? Pardon? Obviously long-term growth trend. And the numbers just keep going up and to the right? So this is not something for us to be thinking about as a flash in the pan. I don't think anybody that took time out of their week to come here would think that it was. But from a growth perspective, where is the growth actually going to come from, right? When you look out, even this year, the vast majority of e-commerce growth is already tipping to the east, to some degree to the south, and the payment methods that are working today in the United States, in Europe, are simply not the payment methods that you're going to need to be relevant as you start to sell cross-border and cross-regionally at an increasing rate. When you look at literally every bubble that's in yellow, right, every single one of them has a local payments ecosystem that's extremely different from credit cards and PayPal, or credit cards, PayPal, and SEPA, right? They don't look like that. You're not going to sell to the bulk of users, or certainly not to the mass market with those three payment methods. And so in order to get into those markets, you're either going to underserve the market by serving a very small percentage at the top that looks like an international buyer, or you've got to do a lot of work, right? Whether that's legal entities, your local bank relationships, working with platform companies like our friends at dLocal, and really doing a lot of effort, right, to bring the buyer to you in a way that you can serve them, right? And from our perspective, my perspective at Grab, my perspective at PayPal, literally nobody can do this alone. It's just vastly too much work. And the world is getting much, much more diverse in a diverse way. The implications of this, even by 2023, is that 84% of all e-commerce is not going to be happening in Europe and in North America, right? This is not something in a distant planning horizon. This is something you need to be planning for today, or hopefully extremely far along in the process of making happen today, because this is where the future of the business is going to be. Already, and I think Alana and I might have slightly different numbers, but when you include not just cash before delivery, but cash after delivery, we look at cash as almost 20% of all online commerce today. Non-card electronic payments as 35%, very typically legacy bank transfers, moving towards modern bank transfers or real-time payments, and 17% wallets today, right? So 70% of all payment methods are simply not the easy stuff, right? It's not the cards, it's not the PayPal, et cetera. So there's a lot of work you've got to go do. And from an intergalactic human race standpoint, you're talking about an entire generation of people, literally, who are never going to rely on a plastic payment card to make a payment, right? They're going directly to digitally issued virtual cards, if you're very lucky, wallet-based payments, cash to electronic delivery, and things that are really not at all what we grew up with as online payment methods, right? So that's simply not going to get you where you want to go from our perspective. And why is this, right? I think it's a reasonable question for someone, particularly an American, where our regulator isn't as good as your regulator is here. Payments is now a national priority, right? There's very few countries that we work in around the world where they don't look at payments as something that they actually have to have a strategic point of view on. In Australia, it's fundamentally around consumer protection, right? GDPR to some degree is a consumer protection exercise, but it's for a lot of reasons, right? You're seeing mandatory local switching, right? Even if you're running a Visa transaction, it's running locally, it's switched locally, it has local fee caps, et cetera. You've got national schemes that completely skip the international Visa MasterCards of the world and settle locally. You have significant financial inclusion programs, which directly plays into what Alana mentioned. That may play out as less cash in some countries or cashless in other countries, right? Is it a big bang? Does it work completely? Of course not. There's starts and there's stops. If you followed demonetization in India, there was a lot of big bang and then there was a lot of false starts, and now they're kind of back at it again. But there's still plenty of cash in the market, no matter how fast they tried to pull the cash out. But it's a strategic priority. I live in Singapore, as Clive said. Literally, my grocery store has a little sign under the till that says, as part of our national cashless strategy, we're going to stop accepting cash at this till on January 1st, right? Like literally everyone got the memo, and that's where the fish are swimming, right? And that's Singapore, right? But Singapore and places like it are influence leaders, and people can follow very quickly what works, and they can adapt new strategies. Very long, strong local KYC, right? That was the Europeans are not the first market to implement local KYC. It's happening truly everywhere around the world. And there's different rules, there's different procedures, there's lots of platforms, thank God, upstairs that'll help with some of it. But if you're going to do things like accept cash or move to a wallet-based model so you can retain your customers, you're going to need to have local KYC solutions in any market that matters, right? And that's a ton of work for you as well. Real-time payments is something we think is by far the most exciting trend. If you're sitting here, it sounds like open banking or SEPA credits. If you're in India, it's UPI. But there's literally 60 schemes around the world that are already in place. About 29 of them have launched something already. The user experience is tremendous, right? And the schemes are quaking, right? Because the combination of your mobile phone, strong identity, and instant payment is absolutely transformational. Particularly if you're making money in the middle. If you're the consumer and you've already skipped a plastic card, to you it's the same thing. To the banks and everybody else in the value chain, which is a lot of us, it's a big, big, big difference, right? And then wallets, right? And I think we're being extremely unfair saying that there's 100 wallets scaling. It's really hundreds of wallets scaling, right? Indonesia alone, we have 35 mobile wallets. Even in China, right, where it looks like a duopoly, there's tremendous competition coming in from $50 and $60 billion companies launching their own wallets and their own ecosystems in China. And this is something there really just isn't one answer for. Every single market has its own DNA and its own reasons for these things to be happening. As I said, I came from Grab. I was there for 2.5 years. For those of you who aren't aware, Uber exited the market and Grab bought the business. One of the big reasons for that was in fact payments, right? So Grab, a non-bank, basically unregulated company, leaned very, very heavily into payments because they own 120 million customers, potentially 100 transactions a month for 120 million customers, right? Find me any product in the world that's that engaging other than your debit card and you're gonna struggle, right? And so we said, look, we're in the middle of people's everyday lives in a business that's terrifically difficult to make money at, which is ride sharing. What else can we do? Well, we do what Google did, we do what Yahoo did, we do what Microsoft did, and we go full stack for the customer, right? We outserve the customer on every single segment of their life, and we build value in credit, in MDR, in providing insurance services, marketplace services, et cetera. And in order to do that, guess what? You need to own payments, right? And so payments became a very fundamental component of the product strategy. It's a core service. It's not a cost-saving mechanism. It's a strategic product category, which is quite obvious. The company's gone very, very heavily into credit at this point, both merchant-facing and consumer-facing credit, and it's used to really drive the flywheel, right? And if I'm a Decathlon or any other major retailer that has lots of footfall and lots of relationship with their customers, you're going to want to follow that same path, right? Because there's so much more value outside of your core business in a lot of cases than there is in your core business, right? And the thing you own is that loyal customer relationship, and you can build a service economy around that, leveraging payments as a way to get there. But that said, right, from our perspective at Rapyd, we have over 900 local payment methods today, which is a ridiculously large number, right? We're not suggesting that anybody try to do that themselves, nor are we even trying to suggest that we did it ourselves, right? We fundamentally believe in cooperation and co-opetition. We're a network-based business. We built a payment network to drive that because we believe there's specialists all around the world who are great at what they do, and we can provide a great interface to those specialists. And in some cases, we go direct because we think we'll get better SLAs or cost, or we're not seeing the kind of quality that we want to see. But ultimately, you need a network of payment to get you there, right? Doing it yourself is very, very expensive, right? To integrate, expensive to maintain. In most cases, regional payment gateways are very, very regional, and there really are not a lot of global players at this point. Even some of the biggest names you know really have a small fraction of this 900 number. Local payment preferences are super fickle, right? When I first moved to Asia with PayPal, all of the different brands that are today getting into payments would call us and say, hey, let's do something, let's do something. A lot of those brands are dead today, right? So if you spent $2 million, $5 million, $10 million rolling out a wallet, 2 years later they're totally dead because they have no consumer traction. In a big company, it's pretty hard to go back and get the money back, right? And explain to your treasurer why you wasted $2 million on the wrong investment, and you've got to go do it all over again. At one point in India, they literally wiped out 100 wallets with a stroke, right? And only one of those wallets is still around today. So if you make that investment yourself, you're in pretty dire straits. We believe that platforms give you option value, so you get the benefit of the reach without trying to bear all the cost and all the risk yourself, right? A lot of the payment methods you can't have, You have to have a local entity, you have to have a local bank account, you have to have local switching. So if you don't partner to get it, you're probably not going to be most relevant for a mass market payment mechanism, right? The dominant payment mechanisms, even in Malaysia, right, are basically bank payment methods that are only directly settlable locally, and you have to work through platform partners to leverage them. Very much the same in Indonesia. And then the last, but definitely not the least, right, is FX, right? If you're selling something like travel, right, you've got $3,000 tour package to Europe for someone who is perfectly affluent, right, but they're going to pay in Vietnamese dong 3 days from today via PaySafe Cash, how much FX risk do you really want to take in Vietnamese dong? The answer is maybe not too much, right? So how do you play the FX game so that you get what you need, you can settle downstream to your suppliers without risk, and at the same time give the consumer a payment method that they really want to enjoy? So what's the good news? The good news is people really want to buy stuff, right? They really want to buy from overseas. It's very, very important to them. It's not at all a small problem, right? So the customers are there, right? So if you make the payment mechanisms available, if you can work through partners to solve logistics and tax issues, absolutely positively there's a huge amount of customers there, and those customers, as we said before, is going to represent 84% of the buyer base in 4 years. So what should your checkout look like, right? From the upfront perspective, right, it really needs to be hyper-localized, right? As a buyer, I want to see my payment methods. It has to be up to date with the most current payment methods. What you'll see with some mature platforms that have been in the APM game for a long time, a lot of the payment methods they have are 8, 9 years old, and people don't really use them anymore, right? They're crappy experiences that haven't been reinvested in. They're not really the state of the art. But even at a larger platform company, it's difficult to go back and say, hey, let's rip out all these Indonesian payment methods and put in different Indonesian payment methods, because they have their own ROI concerns, right? So there's a freshness question that you have to confront, and it really needs to be in local price. I think that's probably pretty obvious to everybody, but conversion rates in local currency are massively higher than conversion rates in foreign currency, and playing games with DCC, et cetera. I mean, honestly, Europeans are much more sophisticated about FX than an American is, but Asians are 25 times more sophisticated, right? They know FX inside and out, and the more games you play with them, the more likely they are to reject you as a venue to shop in. From a business perspective, right, it needs to be optimized, right? You want your brand forward as much as possible. You want to minimize redirects as much as possible, although a lot of payment methods, the redirect is an essential component of the experience, and it is what people expect. You want to integrate through APIs or native SDKs, you think, right? What we've found, of course, is that almost all of our platform companies still have so few engineers to deal with something marginal. They're asking us for web-based products, like in this case our checkout, just to get something out the door and prove it, and then to reintegrate with APIs and SDKs down the line, because they're just very resource hungry and they don't have the engineers available, given that they're also trying to do 50 other projects in their core outside of payments, right? And it has to be simple, right? The last thing anybody really wants is the old ISO model where, yes, I'll help you and yes, I'll process the payment, but you still got 25 bank accounts to reconcile, you got statements everywhere, you have lots of accounting problems, and so your developers might be kind of happy and the business might be kind of happy, but the finance team completely hates you because they can't actually settle or close the books, right? Again, speaking from my time at Grab, there's a lot of people that hate me. Finance department's right at the top, right? Because we're now in our 3rd iteration of reconciliation because we never really got it right from their perspective, and it stayed very, very painful for them for a long time. In terms of methods, and if you've stayed with us since this morning, right, incredibly powerful cash products like PaySafe Cash, lending products and platforms of loan-based products is very much a hot trend today. You want to offer that range of people, range of bank transfer products, as I said, going from legacy bank transfers to modern real-time based payment transfers. Local card schemes in Korea, we have 12 different card schemes that are not Visa and MasterCard, all of which settle locally and differently, but they're extremely, extremely popular, and the same is around the world is true. Clive mentioned Brazil before. Brazil very famously has several of its own card schemes. And then local e-wallets. And as I said, local e-wallets are exploding everywhere for a variety of reasons. They are not all payment companies and they are not all banks. They're also commercial companies with their own wallets. There's reward schemes that behave like wallets. There's installment platforms that express themselves like a wallet. It's total freaking chaos, right? And you want to offer as much of that chaos as possible to activate your buyers and get them through your funnel as quickly as possible. So last slide, right? You should do it. Make it happen. 74% of commerce is going to be outside of the West by 2023. 57% of the buyers want to buy cross-border from you globally. And then 70% of online payments today simply don't look like a card. So if you're going to address that mass market buyer base, you need to take action and make something happen. So with that said.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you very much. Yeah, excellent.
Right.
Now, Joel, I mean, you talk about 900 different local payment methods. I mean, that's an incredible amount. When I was doing work in that business, working with alternatives, I'd got up to 350.
Yeah.
900 is kind of 3 times that. Is there really such a growth in the last 5 or 6 years?
Absolutely. I mean, the world. I mean, like I said, every single country around the world, 200 plus countries, this is happening today, right? I mean, Nepal. I assume you weren't tracking Nepal before. Easily, there's 15 in Nepal, right?
Okay.
So it's not very hard to get to a pretty high number if you're actually going to be hyper local in every market, right?
Yeah.
Myanmar wasn't online at all 5 years ago, right? Myanmar, same story, right?
Yeah.
12 plus ways to pay.
So yeah, I mean, it's sort of local solutions.
Yeah.
That's really what you're saying, isn't it, for payment?
Yeah.
Is there a future sort of utopia where you could envisage perhaps open banking coming in and creating more of a ubiquitous sort of open landscape in terms of payments?
I think the only utopia, the answer is no, there's no utopia. It gets worse.
Okay.
But I think the only thing that really starts to mitigate it is where those interface points are brought together, right? National QR code schemes simplify a lot of the interfacing, how you authenticate the transaction, open banking, et cetera, starts to become more standard, right? So a lot of the pain can be mitigated for the buyer and mitigated for the retailer. But under the covers, you still have switching and acquiring and all the processing detail still has to happen.
Well, as you say, you've still got cards behind a number of these different payment options. Obviously, PayPal, famously, is still largely card-based.
But even if you think about just like a QR code, right? I'm a P2P lender. I can express a national QR, but down the stream, I've got a brand, et cetera, that's totally not card-based. The banks can use the same thing. E-wallet can use the same thing, right? So you get an experience that's quite similar, but under the cover is very different.
Yeah. So let's throw it out to the audience. Any audience questions? I mean, I've got a couple more questions for you, but anyone from the audience like to pose a question or two? Come on. What's the time? Do you need your coffee or something?
Lunchtime.
Whilst you were speaking, I was thinking, who's your client? Who's your customer, though?
Platform companies, right? So 3 different flavors. We have commercial clients, so OTAs, marketplaces, gig economy. Fintechs, and then tech fins that are all moving the other direction. And then frankly, a ton of our network partners, right? Because by definition, our network partners are specialists. They have their own trusted customers. And so as soon as they're offered a project by a trusted customer that's outside of their specialty, they have to go do some work, right? And we're an easy way for them to do work as well. So it's really those 3.
Like one API and... Yeah,
exactly. So we believe it's a vice versa.
Yeah, and you spoke about settlement and reconciliation. Obviously, if you've got 900 different payment methods, okay, you're not going to accept them all. That would be, crazy anyway. But each one has a lot of them have slightly different. Yeah. So
in our case, we funnel them down to one. Yeah. So from our perspective, what you would get from us would be one file.
Yeah.
And if let's say you only have one entity worldwide, you get one bank transfer that reconciles to that one file, right? So it feels as if you're taking just a card, but in reality, there's this diversity under the covers.
Okay, got it. So it's easy to reconcile.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I guess that might be it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Joel.
it. Thank you.